I have a handful of old drawings that I created a couple of years ago that for me are not particularly good. So today I'm going to try to redraw one of my old digital art and see if I can improve it. If you want to see the final result, stick until the end of this video. This is one of my digital drawing that I did a couple of years ago when I was first starting out. I remembered feeling proud of this piece when I finished this because of all the details I put into it, but looking at it now, I cringe when I look at this. There are so many things that needs to be improved in this drawing, and that's what I want to discuss before I start redrawing this. As you might have noticed, the main focal point in this drawing is the tree. But looking at the overall composition, the tree is holding up the entire space, and the rest of the landscape feels like it's only there to just exist without any reason. I mean, there's a whole lot of empty space on the right side that is just green and looks very flat. So whenever someone look at this empty space, their eye ends up bouncing back to the tree because there's nothing interesting to see here. So to fix this, I'm going to throw in something at the right side like rocks, mountains, or flowers or anything, just to add more visual interest and to balance the whole composition. Aside from the focal point and the lack of balance, the shape and the position of the river looks very weird and fake. I mean, if you look at the ground, it has a noticeable slope and it's kind of tilted downward. And given that angle, the river would logically flow downhill instead of staying flat like in this drawing. So yeah, kinda weird that I didn't notice that, but that is something that makes me cringe when I see it. And I think my main reason for adding the river in that angle and position was to create a leading line to the horizon and create a perspective, but it clearly didn't work very well. It also looks bland, and even though we can see some textures of rocks at the bottom, it still does look fake and unnatural. So yeah, I'm going to create a very simple body of water on the new version of this drawing. I also think the fence in the background doesn't look good even though it creates a sense of depth because of its perspective. Right now, it feels like it's floating because there's no proper connection with the ground and it's not contributing anything to the flow of the image. I also think that it's too perfect and doesn't have like variation. I mean, look at the woods, it has the same spacing and appearance and that looks so plain and not very interesting. So I'm just going to remove it entirely. I also think that the perspective looks very flat. There's not enough atmospheric perspective to actually make it feel like there's distance. And right now, it looks like everything is hanging out on the same plane. So I'm going to add some mountains and trees at the background to create a better sense of depth and perspective. Aside from the composition, I also think that the lighting and shadow of the tree feels weak and doesn't have a strong character. For a scene that's supposed to be sunny, we really need to have like a bold contrast for the shadows, like under the tree. But right now, the shadows are so soft that they are practically blending into the grass, which just makes everything look kind of washed out. So on the next version, I'm going to try making the shadows a bit stronger to help the whole scene feel brighter and more confident. Another problem that I'm seeing in this drawing was that there's so much green that it's kind of suffocating. I mean, yes, nature is green, right? But this is too much green. So I'm going to add different colors here and there to break the overflow of greens and to make the scene pleasant and interesting. Overall, the composition of this drawing is very empty and forgettable. It looks peaceful for sure, but it's also boring. There's no real story here. Just a tree, a fence, and some empty fields. So with all of those things that needs to be improved, it's time for me to redraw this and see if I can improve it. Okay, so this is not something I usually do, but I think creating some quick thumbnail sketches will help me find the best composition for this new drawing. I'll make a few simple sketches to test out like different layouts before choosing the one that feels right. And the goal here is to experiment with different placement of objects so I can be sure I'm headed in the right direction. I don't have a specific composition in mind yet, but I'm thinking of keeping things simple to make the drawing more impactful. I really want to avoid overcomplicating things. Sometimes simplifying a design can actually make it more interesting and focused, so I might need to remove some elements to keep the composition sharp and direct. One thing I noticed from the original drawing was the bird's eye view angle. I use that angle since the original drawing has a flying leaf included, but since I'm not planning to include that flying leaf in the new drawing at all, that kind of shot feels unnecessary and a bit overdone. I think a more traditional like an eye level shot will work better since it will give the composition more clarity and make it easier for the viewer to connect with the subject. Okay, so I have 3 thumbnail sketches here, and so far, I'm leaning towards this second option. The composition is clean and uncluttered, and I feel like the placement of the grass, the water, and the mountains creates a natural flow, leading the viewer's eye across the scene. And unlike the original drawing with a bird's eye view, this perspective feels grounded and calming, making it easier for the viewer to connect with the scene. So now that I have a sketch to follow, I'm going to create the line art for the new drawing, and it looks like this. The next step would be to color this. If you're interested in learning how I approach my coloring technique, I highly recommend checking out my video on creating anime style backgrounds from start to finish. And in that video, I dive deep into my process, like covering everything from initial sketch to the final polish. And I talk about color theory and how to pick colors using color palette to create a beautiful composition. I also share my tips on how to use lighting and shadows to give depth and dimension, making your artwork feel more three-dimensional and alive. There are a lot of tips and techniques that I covered in that video, so make sure to check it out. Okay, so this is done, and so far I'm quite satisfied with how it looks. The foreground has clearer details now, with the flowers in the rack acting as another visual interest to the grass, and I think this gives the viewer something to look at immediately after looking away from the main subject, which is the tree. I still maintain the tree as the focal point, but compared to the original drawing, it feels more balanced now. And the addition of the trees in the background and a more expansive horizon line helps create better flow and depth to the scene. I also use a cooler tones for the background mountains to create an atmospheric perspective, and this gives a more convincing sense of space which was lacking in the previous version of the drawing. And for the water, I decided to create a lake instead of a river to complement the peacefulness of the scene. But I feel like it's a bit too clean and smooth, but I guess that should be okay for now. The shadow on the trees and the ground is much clearer and darker now, and the green color in the field has been toned down and balanced with the blue sky and the white flowers on the foreground. Overall, I think this new version is much more interesting than the previous drawing. But I'd love to know what you think. Do you think I was able to improve the old drawing, or did I make it much worse? Let me know in the comment section. And if you wanted to study this drawing that I've made, you can get the project file through the link on the description below. And also, we have a Discord server when you can send me your own drawing and I'm going to do my best to make it better. Of course, with your permission. I won't do it if you don't like to. And one last thing, which is very important for me. I'm almost at the 10,000 subscribers, so if you find my videos to be helpful on your art journey, Please consider to subscribe, like, and share this video so we can grow even stronger. As long as you guys watch my content, I will continue to make videos just for you. Thanks everyone. Take care.